is this America anymore? And if not, what will we do to reclaim our country? That's why we're here. Because the threats we face today, disinformation, voter suppression, rising authoritarianism, they're not new. They're strategies that are dressed up in new costumes. So let's go through a few of these examples. When states are passing laws to suppress the vote, especially in Black and brown communities, when election officials are being harassed and threatened for doing their job, when disinformation is spreading like wildfire and truth appears optional, when the foundations and guardrails of our democracy are being chipped away, not with a bang, but with 1,000 little cuts. It's a reminder that the League story, my story, and democracy isn't something that we inherit fully formed. It's something that we build, we protect, and we expand together. As a country, we've weathered wars, depressions, witch hunts, the pandemic, and every time we have risen to meet the moment. The League knows what this fight looks like. We've seen it before, we've fought it before, and we're ready to fight it again, but we cannot do it alone. We need you, your voice, your energy, and your belief that democracy belongs to all of us. The question is, what will you do with what you know? Because education is just the beginning. It's not enough to be informed. We must be ignited, agitated. We must move from learning to doing, from witnessing to acting. Reclaiming democracy is not a solo act. It requires an orchestrated movement. We must remind this country, and perhaps even ourselves, of who we are and what we stand for, and that we can be the ones who rise to meet this moment. We can turn the tide. It is not too late. So keep going. Let's keep going. I want to share what it means to agitate, shake things up. So let's be honest about where we are and what we're up against. Authoritarianism is the consolidation of power to few at the expense of us all. Authoritarianism doesn't always arrive with tanks in the streets, even though on June 14th in DC, this little military parade seemed like a warning shot, a reminder. More often, authoritarianism wears a suit and tie. It hides behind calls of law and order. It wraps itself in the flag. It sounds reasonable until it's not. What we're seeing right now is what experts call the authoritarian drift, the slow erosion of democratic norms and the normalization of anti-democratic behavior, the quiet boiling of the frog. And make no mistake, y'all, it's here. Authoritarianism rarely storms in with a bang. It creeps in quietly through unchecked power and silence dressed as order. When military parades take over Washington streets, not to honor the people, but to project control, that's not patriotism. That's intimidation. When federal troops are sent into cities like Los Angeles over the objection of local leaders, that's not public safety. That's power flexed without consent. These are not lost. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a broader pattern. Crush dissent, ignore local voices, and twist democratic symbols into tools of fear. This is authoritarianism, draped in red, white, and blue. And every time we let it slide, we allow it to grow. So we can't afford to be quiet, not now, not ever. Authoritarianism is not just something that happens over there. It's here and it shows up in many forms. When elected officials discredit elections without evidence and refuse to accept the results of a free and fair election, that's authoritarianism. When laws are designed to suppress the vote and silence communities, young people, low-income voters, and people with disabilities, that's authoritarianism. When power is hoarded, courts are stacked, and dissent is punished, that's also authoritarianism. And when communities are targeted, when immigrant families live in fear of raids, when trans kids are stripped of care, and when Black history is erased from schools, that is all authoritarianism in action. I will say it plainly. This time that we're in, this is the second coming of slavery. And I don't say that lightly. I say it because I see the patterns. I see the fear, the control, the dehumanization of people. I see neighbors who are afraid to leave their homes, not sure of who or what is waiting to whisk them away off the streets. I see parents who are scared to send their children to school. I see people who are afraid to speak up because they know what happens to people who do. I also see something else too, something that's just as dangerous. I see people who think, it's not about me. People who say, I'm not an immigrant, I'm not trans, I'm not Black, I'm not poor, I'm not even political. As if authoritarianism only knocks on certain doors. Newsflash, it's happening to all of us. It's happening to all of us. Because when one group's rights are stripped away, everyone else's rights are at risk. When one community is silenced, the whole country loses our voice. When we allow injustice to happen to them, we are writing the blueprint for it happening to us. It looks like indigenous land protectors being surveilled and defending sacred ground. It looks like people with disabilities losing access to care when budgets are slashed behind closed doors. It looks like journalists who are being jailed for reporting on the corruption. And it looks like libraries being defunded for carrying books that challenge the status quo. It looks like reproductive health care being criminalized and doctors being threatened for doing what they're trained to do. It looks like drag performers being targeted by legislation and artists being censored for their expression. It looks like workers being fired for organizing and whistleblowers who are being silenced. And climate activists being labeled as extremists, and scientists being pressured to change their scientific findings. Authoritarianism doesn't need your identity to target you. It just needs your indifference. This is not about policy. It's about power and terrorizing others. It's about who gets to belong and who gets to feel safe. And it's about accountability, or, right now, the lack of it. But let's be honest, this crisis did not start with one administration. It did not start with one president or one person. It did not even start in the last decade. It's been built for years through gerrymandering, voter suppression, disinformation, and the slow dismantling of democratic norms. When President Nixon resigned in 1974, following 2 years of political scandal, illegal activity, and obstruction of justice, the League responded with a call for systemic reform. The League's president, Ruth Clusson, declared at our 1974 National Convention, the corruption, venality, and arrogant usurpation of power which led to Watergate has had a deadly, corrosive effect on political thought and life. She cited polling at the time showing that 66% of Americans distrusted the government. It's even less now, y'all. And she warned that if faith in institutions was not restored, democracy itself would be endangered. The League understood Watergate as a rupture in the constitutional order that demanded structural repair. As Clusin stated, we must recognize and then rectify those parts of the government which stems from flaws in a still imperfect system. In the wake of Watergate, the League rose to meet this crisis of trust and accountability, helping shape its modern identity as a fierce advocate for transparency and democratic reform. That moment tested the very fabric of our democracy, and the League responded with clarity, courage, and conviction. Today, we are facing another defining test: the erosion of checks and balances, the attacks on the rule of law, and the open disregards for democratic norms which signal the constitutional crisis that we are in, and we cannot afford to ignore it. But just as we did 50 years ago, we can meet this moment, not with fear, but with the full strength of our legacy and the urgency of now. In early April, the onslaught of increased attacks on our democratic systems and the complete and utter failure of Congress came to a head when the President of the United States defied an order to return wrongfully deported Marylander, where I'm from, Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, to the United States. Let me say that again. The President of the United States defied an order from the Supreme Court. And today, they continue to hide behind language that says, what does facilitate mean? Come on. Do we not know what that word means? We do. It's just not acceptable. It assumes that we either aren't paying attention or that we aren't savvy enough to understand. And it's a bunch of crap. It flies in the face of democracy, much like the racist rhetoric, dismantling of equality initiatives, the attacks on voting access that we are seeing play out in the world of politics today. But make no mistake, this is an effort to undo the progress that we achieved through the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, to reduce the number of eligible people who can participate to vote each election cycle, to find another way to exert control over the American people. This is not a drill. This is not, we'll be fine in 4 years. This is not, someone else will fix it. No, this is a 5-alarm fire. And the question is, are you going to watch it burn, or are you going to be the water that puts it out? And on that note, are you going to be a sprinkle? Or are we going to be a downpour? Yes. I'm assuming you all mean that we're going to be a downpour. Here's what I know. Everyone agrees that democracy is threatened, but very few people see themselves as part of the solution. We keep waiting for someone else to save us, for the courts, for Congress, the next election. And while I hate to be the one to tell y'all, kind of, there is no Calvary coming. The Calvary is us. Democracy is not saved by governments. It never has been. It's reclaimed by people. We have to stop looking for help, and we have to start being the help. We have to stop talking about the problem and organizing collectively around a solution. And here's the good news. We don't even need a majority of people to take action. According to political scientist Erica Chenoweth, it takes just 3.5% of the population to be actively engaged in nonviolent resistance to bring down an authoritarian regime. Their research at Carl Ryan Center for Human Rights said nonviolent protests are twice as likely to succeed as armed conflicts, and those engaging in a threshold of 3.5% of the population have never failed to bring about change. That's just a committed few of us, willing to, not of us, all